Hello and welcome to Third Spaces with Michelle. I'm Michelle and welcome to the Saturday Reading Room, our third space for books and reading and taking a pause. So, I'm Michelle, and for those of you who may not know me, I am a 57-year-old digital nomad living around the world out of a 24-inch suitcase, working for myself. I made a series of videos that you might want to watch about quitting my successful life and how that all transpired, going from full-time job, house, full of things, to getting rid of 99% of my stuff and hitting the road first in small chunks. And now I've been doing this full-time for 3 years. So I'll link to those below if you'd like to watch that. But today is about books and reading, so let's dive in. First, I'd like to say, this is my space here in New Zealand, where I'm currently living for a couple of months in Wellington, New Zealand. And this is just such a wonderful spot. This house is so wonderful for reading. It's currently winter down here in the south, which reading for me is anytime. Perfect weather anytime. Summer, autumn, spring, winter. But winter is particularly cozy. And Wellington is known to be the windiest city in New Zealand. So there's often times where the wind is howling and it's the perfect time to pick up a book and cozy up. So I love it. So for the last few weeks on the Saturday Reading Room, we've been focused on one book, which is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And I finished this book, so we're going to be moving on, but I wanted to just talk about how much I loved this book and how wonderful it is for the imagination. I learned so much about plants, about indigenous culture, about this beautiful woman. I can't even tell you how beautifully she writes. There's so many pages that I have bookmarked and highlighted. And it's just, I think, a book grounding us into the world at this time that we need it. I know it's a book that I'm going to return to again and again. And if you did read this book, I would love to hear in the comments below your thoughts, or if you're still reading it, I would love to learn what your thoughts are, or if you plan on reading it. If you're reading something else, which is totally welcome on the Saturday Reading Room, then if this spurred your interest and added it to your to-be-read pile. So do let me know. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some books that I've read this year, another one that I just finished this week. And I have 3 books in this theme. And the theme is death. Why death? Well, if you've watched my other videos, I do have a section in one of the About Me videos that explains that I am a certified death doula. I was called to get my certification last year in 2025, and I spent the spring and the late winter, early spring getting my death doula certification from the University of Vermont, which was an amazing experience. But death is something that I think about a lot and ponder a lot and imagine. I'm going to be doing a video, complete dedicated video to what exactly a death doula is, but in the simplest terms, a death doula companions the dying and also offers support to family and friends of the dying. And that's the most simplest definition of death doula, or liminal companion, I like to call us. But these 3 books that I'm talking about, I keep turning to books with themes of death just because it's something that really interests me, and how people approach dying, how different cultures approach dying, people who have gotten close to death, fiction books about death. So I'm going to talk about these 3 fiction books currently, and then a couple of other books about death right now. Okay, so this is a book I just finished this week, and I loved this book so much. It's so beautiful. It's called Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. And first of all, this author is one of my most favorite authors. His book, House by the Cerulean Sea, if you've never read it, I highly recommend just going out to your favorite bookstore this weekend and picking it up, and just, you're in for such a wonderful I feel like we all need a warm hug right now, and that book is a warm hug. It's just beautiful. And I read that, I want to say 2 years ago. I read I read The House by Cerulean Sea. And then I was talking to my son, who is also a voracious reader. And when we were talking, he lives in the United States. We always talk about books on our calls. At some point, we talk about all the books that we're reading, or we text each other about books. But on this phone call, I said, I really need a book, in addition to Braiding Sweetgrass, a fiction book. And he's the one who brought up this book. And I took a trip because my house here in Wellington is a little bit outside of the center, the central business district. Ugh. My house here in Wellington is a little bit outside, about 20 minutes outside of central Wellington, like the city. So after we talked and he recommended this book, I took the bus into town, and Wellington has a really amazing, it's got a few great bookstores, but there's one that I really love called Unity Books, and they had Under the Whispering Door. So happy. I love the cover art. It's beautiful. And the tagline here is, his death was their beginning. And I'll read the back of it. Welcome to Karen's Crossing. The tea is hot, the scones are fresh, and the dead are just passing through. When a reaper collects Wallace from what she claims is his funeral, he's outraged. But Hugo, owner of a peculiar tea shop, promises to help him cross over. And Wallace reluctantly accepts the truth. Yet even in death, he refuses to abandon his life, despite spending all of it working. And as Wallace grows closer to Hugo and shares jokes with his resident ghost, he wonders if he missed something. So when he's given 1 week to pass to the other side, Wallace sets about creating a lifetime in just 7 days. An uplifting story about a life spent at the office and a death spent building a home. Highly recommend. I loved the fantasy of this book and the character of death, even though it's not named death. Anyway, there's beautiful imagery. It's just a wonderful book. So I highly recommend this one. The other book that I read a couple of months ago about death, and I'm sorry I don't have the book here because I gave it to a lending library. The way that I live, this is the saddest part, is that I can't really collect books, even though I buy physical books and don't just read on a tablet. But I buy the physical books and then we'll give them to a lending library or take them to a bookstore. Oh, but it's so hard to part with the books. Anyway, back to this other book about death that I read in the spring. I read Vigil by George Saunders, which was a new book this year. And George Saunders is really, I think, a really amazing writer. He also teaches writing at Syracuse University. He's a Booker Prize winner for Lincoln in the Bardo. And I also have one of his other books right here because I'm reading his book, A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, which is basically a book version of a course that he does, which I love. This is a great book. But the book Vigil really captured my attention when they were in pre-promotion for it because of the subject matter, which is a death companion who has crossed over herself. She's been dead for a while, but she actually is assigned to people who are about to pass and help them crossing over. So I loved that theme, so I loved that synopsis of the book, and I couldn't wait to buy it. I don't believe in spending a lot of time just trashing a book because, first of all, I have the utmost respect for anyone who's written a book. I have a book myself in draft and I've been working on it for a long time, and I really understand what it takes, I think, to be working, at least be attempting to write a book. So I just so admire people. So I don't like to spend time trashing what they've done, but also I'm going to share that I wanted to love this book and I didn't love this book. I felt so much potential with the subject matter that didn't follow through. So I was a little bit disappointed and immediately forgot about it. But I continued to look for fiction books about death. So last night I decided on my next book where death is a theme or a character, and I started reading Mort by Terry Pratchett. This book is almost 20 years old, and I feel like art finds you when it's meant. I am so excited about this book. I have to tell you, reading the first chapter just had me delighted and just deep into my imagination, and I just am so excited to read this one. So I think it's going to be really good. Just for a reference, I do have it on my tablet, so it's Terry Pratchett's Mort. And so just a little blurb on this one. Mort, a clever and fabulous satirical fantasy and installment in the Discworld series, where a cheerfully hapless young man discovers that work can kill your love life when your boss and your girlfriend's dad is the Grim Reaper. I was like, I'm in. I'm so in. And it's delightful. So I will continue to update you on as we meet every week about where I am at, but I kind of feel like this is going to be a quick read. It is, yeah. I think that I'm going to get through this one pretty quickly. I have 3 other books that I want to mention and also recommend in the death realm, and these are memoir or real life accounts books. And the first one is, which I just read this spring, and I can't believe I've never read this book before, but When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. I feel like everyone needs to read this book. It is such a beautiful book. It is so beautifully written. It is so sad. It's wonderful. And I feel like it's a must read for anyone who's a reader, who's a person. Because we all are going to die. As much as, especially in the West, we are death adverse. And that is some of the reason why I've become a death doula, is to kind of change that process or assist in that process. And again, I'll make a separate video about that. But death comes for all of us. It's as natural as being born. Those are the bookends of us living in this reality and on this planet. And so reading stories about it, I actually think beautiful, especially beautiful stories like this, can just be perspective changing. Highly recommend this book. The other book, I'm sorry I don't have the physical book, In My Time of Dying by Sebastian Junger, who's a really incredible author. And it's a very thin book, and it's really interesting, his experience with a very near-death experience. And I found it fascinating and a quick read. And I really recommend that one too. That might be a good one to kind of jump into a true life story with the theme of death and kind of get going on it. And And the third book is called Final Gifts. And Final Gifts is by Maggie Callahan and Patricia Kelly. And the book is actually an accounting. These are two hospice nurses, death doulas, about real life people dying and their experience with caring for them and their experiences dying. And it was a required reading for my death doula course. And I am so glad to know this book. It is a wonderful, wonderful book, and one that I return to over and over. And there's so many common, like, data-driven things that happen as we're dying. It's really a fascinating read, and also I think a very comforting read as well. So death is very much on my mind and every day. And I don't laugh because I think it's funny, but it really is. It doesn't need to be this thing that is so scary and that we're afraid of. And I love to have it currently right now, especially reading books that bring death in as, like I said, as a character, as a theme. I'll be continuing searching out books about death and sharing them with you. And I really would be curious to know, like, have you read any of these books about death? Is death something that you're like, oh, not interested in that, and why? Or yes, I'm curious, and wow, this opens me up. Because I know I said, that When Breath Becomes Air is a must read for everyone, just because it's so, who's enthusiastic about reading it, just because it's so beautifully written. But it's about accepting death into our lives, which I honestly do believe makes death easier, and that we can inform how we die. And I'll be dedicating a whole video to that in the future, so I won't spend any more time digging into that here. But yes, so that brings us up to speed with what I've been reading and some books that I have to recommend to you. I'd love to know if you've read any TJ Klune, and I'd love to know if you have books about death or death as character that you would recommend to me. I would love to hear and have you drop into the comments any books that you'd love to recommend. The next featured book for the Saturday Reading Room, I haven't chosen yet. I am have a really long list of TBR, and I'm going to be headed into the city to go to the bookstore in the next week. So I'm going to reference my list, and next week we'll have the featured book of the month. So next week we'll have the featured book of the month. I have a few that I'm kind of kicking around. There's, with new releases, there's Via Coco, which sounds amazing, an incredible summer read, even though I'm in winter in the Southern Hemisphere, about an intergenerational friendship. It just looks pretty wonderful. It kind of shot to the top of my list. Then I have Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. I've not read that, and I feel like that's a pretty strong contender as well. And then I also am very interested in this book which is a book of short stories, called Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. So those are the three that are at the top of my list for the next featured read here on the Saturday Reading Room. If you've read them or have an interest in them or have strong feelings about one of them, please drop into the comments, and we'll take a look at how we go. Okay, so now we're to the point. All right, so let's do some reading together. I can see that the light's fading. It's about 5:15 here, so it's getting dark. The wind is supposed to be kicking up, so now is a perfect time to read. Take a little 10-minute break before I make my dinner to read with you all. So I'm going to be reading on my tablet, which I'm sad I don't have a physical book, but let's read for 10 minutes. Let's start by, I always like to kind of set the tone for reading. I have my cup of tea, and let's do just a quick breathing exercise to kind of set us into place. Let's take a deep breath in through our nose, and then we'll hold for 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then out through the mouth. Let's do that again. Put our hand on our heart. Wow, I love a breathing exercise. Okay, so let's read. And I've been setting some of these with some ambient noise in the back, some rain, but I'm playing around with just doing silence, and you'll have to let me know when you come to the reading room what you prefer. And today it's going to be quiet. You may hear my sweet doggo friend. He's actually taking a snooze in the corner in his crate. Yeah, so let's get to it. Happy to read with you today. All right, 10 minutes of quiet focus and reading, and a great way to end the practice. I've made a video about this, and something that I've adopted myself is journaling about the reading. I came up with 5 prompts for my reading practice to kind of deepen my reading practice and really adapt loosely what is known as close reading, kind of really giving thought to the passages and what they made you feel. But for me, I love to handwrite, and handwriting is amazingly good for your cognitive health. Journaling about what you read is also amazing for your cognitive health. And this channel is about nurturing our creative and cognitive health and our imaginations. And so I'll put a link down below to that video about the benefits of a reading journal, and that also includes the 5 prompts. I'm gonna go ahead and make for next week, I'm gonna make a downloadable for everyone with the journal prompts, and that way you could just download it in a Google Doc or a PDF and print it and handwrite on it into your journal, or even just on the paper. So I'm gonna go journal on what I've read and have some dinner. And again, thank you so much for being here. If you like this video or any of my other videos, I would love if you liked and subscribed, and that way you never miss one. I'll be doing more videos on being a death doula, on books, on the Saturday Reading Room, and nurturing our creative and cognitive health with our imagination. I have a whole bunch of things planned that I'm super excited about to share with you. Drop into the comments for me where you are reading right now. What city, what space are you reading? In a library? Are you reading in a third space? Are you reading at home? I'd love to know. Just say hi and drop it there into the comments. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. And until next time, stay safe, be well. Bye for now.